Lindsay. So, nawn ni neidio syth I fewn in ein sgwrs efo'r siaradwyr gwas sy'n yma efo ni hyn yma, a bydd rhaid I fi newid drosodd I Saesneg rwan oherwydd ein siaradwyr sy'n efo ni ddim yn cael y gyfieithu gan Iestyn yn anffodus. So I will now be starting off in English and continuing on in English now so that our speakers can understand what's being said on the other end of Zoom. We weren't able to plug Iestyn in to make that work. I think this should work much easier. So the plan is I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to do a round. We have 3 speakers here with us today. 2 up on our screens here. Rob in Bude. Rob. Allan from Cwmpas. And Sam is here with us in the room, and you all recognise Sam because he's part of our assembly here. So just to go around in a circle with the 3, the first question is just for 1 minute. Can you just introduce who you are and what does your organisation do? And I'm going to start with Rob, please.
Hi, remember to unmute. Very pleased to be here. So I'm Robert Uhlig from Bude Climate Partnership. I'm the project coordinator for it. We're funded by the lottery and the Climate Action Fund. And we've been in existence for about 2 years now, just over 2 years. And we were a group of environmental groups, local environmental and community groups that came together in Bude to apply to the lottery because we wanted to do something about climate change. We didn't really know what to do, so we asked for a development fund, and that gave us a chance to run a series of projects to examine our local carbon footprint and to develop ideas and solutions to it, and to pilot those and to do some engagement exercises. We did 12 projects over 18 months. About half of them were research projects, looking at things like our community's carbon footprint, doing a transport study, a tourism study, researching certain demographics. We've got a disproportionate number of people over the age of 65 here because people retire here a lot, and they have the largest carbon footprints on average. So we looked at them, and then we piloted various different responses. And we're now just in the process of applying for further funding from the lottery to now deliver the projects that we've developed over the next 5 years.
Great, thank you, Rob. And Allan, you give us an introduction to you and what it is you do.
Os oedd pawb, dwi'n dysgu'n Cymraeg, but tonight, I'm not ready to present in Cymraeg, so I'll siarad Saesneg, if that's okay. Diolch. I work for Cwmpas. We used to be called the Wales Cooperative Centre, but we changed our name recently to Cwmpas, which I think represents what we do. We support communities to find direction in their vision, aims and goals. And I don't know if the slide has gone up. We work we're a development organisation and we work across Wales. So we'll support any community group that comes to us with an idea. And it can be in housing, social enterprise. That's one of the slides. Employee ownership. We work with different groups, and we have the Digital Communities Wales, which supports people to get digitally connected, and communities creating homes. So before this job, I worked as a community-led housing advisor, and I'll speak to that for part of my response, I think, in the next question.
Great,
Great,
diolch i ti, Allan, thank you very much. Sam, who are you? What do you do?
Sam, well, I live in Cwmpas, and so I'm local here, and obviously I'm part of this, but okay, we're good. So with a different cap on, and during the daytime, I run Climate Cymru, which is an organisation that was born out of the desire amongst sort of Welsh society to have some kind of unified voice on the build-up to COP26, the UN Climate Conference last year, and so to represent the people of Wales and the organisations of Wales at that conference, and to sort of galvanise society to build a bit of momentum and energy to support the bold commitments at the conference. So that's where it came about, and it quickly sort of snowballed and exploded into a pretty expansive network across Welsh society. And as that was happening, it struck me as I was running this that there was all sorts of opportunities and needs, and people kept coming to us. Oh, now that you've got this network, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And so after COP26, we had an almost unanimous from the 300 organisations now that are partners from across society. We had a unanimous call out to carry on and a whole co-creation process of what it is that we could do to make the most transformational impact. And we've come for a sort of Climate Cymru round 2, which is now a long-term funded kind of project to unite the people of Wales and climate action and nature and justice, and Grove Near partners, as well as others in the room. So we work closely with them, and I guess I'll talk more. I'll leave it there, and I don't know, that's a bit of an intro.
Yeah. Perfect intro, thank you very much, the 3 speakers. Our next question gives you 5 minutes, so you can deep dive into what it is you do. Tell us about the action that you're doing at the moment. And Rob, we'll start with you straight into your video, or do you want to say something?
I'll just say a few words. So in terms of action, right now at this moment, we're sort of in a hiatus between all the research projects we've done and the projects that we want to deliver over the next 5 years. And the largest of those is a sustainable tourism project, and the video is about that. So this is what we hope to be doing over the next 5 years.
So grateful for Chris taking on the role of our technology expert here. Thank you, Chris. And the Wi-Fi signal is not fantastic down here, so we're trying to take all this to your mobile phone at the moment. Well, it was working earlier, of course.
70% of Bude's entire economy is dependent on tourism.
Tourism is massively important to Bude. So many people rely on it, jobs in season and out of season, and lots of restaurants and shops survive on the tourism trade in the summer. And there are people who live here, like me, who come here and have come here to surf, or they come here to paddle on the canal, or sup, or coasteer, but also just to kind of feel the atmosphere of what it is to be on the Cornish coast.
Extreme weather is already affecting Bude. Talking to a range of different tourism businesses or people involved in the visitor economy, just under 1 in 5 businesses of the businesses we spoke to had already experienced disruption to supply chain or their own premises or visitor bookings or their own ability to plan already.
We found from our surveys that the beaches are the primary reason why people come here.
We know that with sea level rises, we might be underwater here in 10 or 20 years' time. If we have huge storms and it washes all the sand away, then actually we won't have a sandy beach, and that's a really devastating effect on a town that relies on its beach for its tourism. Bude-based tourism businesses can really help achieve this target of net zero by 2030 by mitigating climate change, and that's not such a hard thing really. There are so many small things that each tourism business can do by encouraging people to get out of their cars, perhaps leaving the car at the campsite and walking into town, or cycling, by encouraging biodiversity on their sites.
We leave areas uncut, like wildflower meadows, so that creates the natural habitat for things like bees and butterflies, and they're obviously really nice spaces for visitors to interact with.
Work with local suppliers to reduce the food miles and also product miles.
I think it's really important that businesses work together. Bude's great at working together. There's no point in businesses doing things twice. If one business finds something that works really well, then they might as well share it with everyone else.
There are some really extraordinary examples of very well-informed individuals, fantastic practice within individual businesses. It's about bringing that out and sharing that and making that the new norm.
Many in the community are working together through the Bude Climate Partnership. By pulling them all together, we can really make a difference and a really amplified effect on the way we can approach climate change. We're looking at ways of trying to provide awareness and education through that network to make sure people realise the impacts of their behaviour on the environment.
How can they then ramp up their response to all this and understand that if they do come together, they create an incredible network, they focus on resilience, how can they become a leader beyond their authority and change what's happening across Cornwall and what's happening across the southwest because they're leading the way.
I think to the businesses that maybe don't feel like it's quite so important, you have to look into the future.
We are facing an emergency. We are facing a climate crisis, an existential crisis. A little bit more recycling isn't going to cut the mustard. We need to transform everything that we're doing. Rebecca Solnit refers to hope as not sitting on the sofa clutching a lottery ticket, hoping your numbers come up. She refers to it as an axe you break down the door with in an emergency. So it's a very active sort of hope. If we find the will, and what BCP has done is create the space for that will to come forward now, then we do have a hope in hell of coming out with a changed but resilient community and industry.
I mean, look, if climate change is a hoax, what happens if we walk a lot, we're healthy, we spend time at the beach, we cycle, we eat local food, we have bees buzzing in the flower meadows around us. Everything that we can do to mitigate climate change makes life better, and it makes us healthier and makes the planet healthier.
I think Bude's got the right people in it and the right energy and right determination. Some really, really inventive people, and it's an opportunity now for those to come together and the best possible future be crafted and delivered by the community itself.
Thank you, Rob. I think that's an excellent introduction to what you've been doing, and I suspect that people in the room here will recognise similarities between the two areas. Allan, will you spend 5 minutes for us going into a bit more detail about the actions that you're doing at Cwmpas now?
Yes, sure. So my current job is Sustainable Development Advisor, and I'm specifically at the moment looking at a programme of support for social enterprises around net zero. What we're finding at the moment, there's lots of support for larger organisations, multinational corporations, to kind of reach that target, and also for small and medium-sized enterprises, but nothing specific for social enterprises. So I'm looking at what we can do to support social enterprises to be part of the race to zero. But more generally, across the organisation, what we do as a group of people, so there's about 100 people working for Cwmpas, and we're in every part of Wales, in north, south, mid, west, and we, I don't know if there's if the slides can go up, but that are related to my talk. But so the section that I work in is social enterprise at the moment, and yeah, the type of organisations. Chris, if you could go back up to the top. Sorry, my intro slide. So this is an organisation called Anticineog. No, it's not coming up.
It's right. Yeah,
Yeah, there we go. So this is Stiniog, and they're a social enterprise in Stiniog, and they've created an outdoor park for mountain biking and other associated activities. And what this organisation has done is pivoted from the idea that this should be a commercial operation and brought it into the hands of the community. So that's what we're about. We're about making sure that resources stay in local areas and can be accessed by local people for developing their communities. As you can see, this is a group who supported our rebranding into Cwmpas. But we would work with a group to take them from their first idea through to the fulfilment of their project, and that's what we do across social business, but also in housing, and we would work with people who are concerned with digital inclusion as well. If we could go on to the slide that I have about housing, I can go into a bit more depth about what that support might look like. So, for 3 years, I worked, if you could go back one, I worked as a community-led housing advisor, and my job was to meet with the client communities and to hear their ideas and then to help them to bring that idea into fruition and to take them through the whole process of what that might involve. And that could be thinking about how they would incorporate as an organisation, where they would get their finances from, how they would work together as a team, because there should be a lot of discussion about how you're going to do these things as a team, how to make it sustainable in the long term. This organisation is to Cyfred Housing Co-op in Machynlleth. So I worked with them for 2 or 3 years, and this is the sort of support you could expect from a Cwmpas representative, and it's all free. Most of our funding comes from Welsh Government or from bodies such as Nationwide Foundation, and previous to this we were funded by Europe. So the advice is all free, but we take you from those first ideas and take you through step by step of how to get where you need to go to. And then in the case of this organisation, so I helped them to raise £140,000 in loan stock, and then £140,000 mortgage. We provided advice for them with a financial planner, so they could make that work over a 40-year period, work with them on a business plan and things like that. So we're very much in it for the long term, making sure that your enterprises and projects are sustainable and can be sustained over time. And that's our primary goal, really, is to embed community ownership within communities across Wales. So the thing that I did for them at the end of my period of time in this job was to apply for funding for a decarbonisation of the housing co-op. So at the moment they're on oil. We wanted to look at how we would insulate that building and get it converted to a more sustainable fuel source. So we identified a fund through the Nationwide Building Society and have applied for about £50,000 worth of funding. If that comes off, we'll hear in December, and then they'll get a decarbonisation retrofit, and we'll also look at 15 of the housing co-ops across Wales to see how we could decarbonise. There's a 30-second video, which if you like, you could play now just to introduce who they are, and that's my time.
There is a desperate shortage of affordable housing in Machynlleth and the local area, and many recent property sales have gone to second homeowners. It drives up local prices to a level way beyond the average local person's wage. Coming together as a community to create homes has meant we could create affordable housing for everyone. But more than that, it means support and togetherness through good and bad times. It's a pretty special place.
Great. Diolch, Alan. We've had some talks about housing and things in the assembly here, so I'm sure that's very useful as well. And Sam, jump in a bit deeper to what you first said in your introduction about Climate Cymru. What's happening?
So yeah, I think we left off at the end of COP26 and with this mandate to carry on, and so we had hundreds of conversations, and so what to do with this amazing network, and we have 300 organisations, and that's universities and unions and institutions and businesses and sporting organisations and social enterprises and of course lots of different charities across all sorts of different interest areas, as well as the sort of micro, tiny organisations, one-man bands or one-woman bands, I should say, and community groups as well. So we had this like eclectic range and covering much more than the typical environmental movement might, interest areas that intersect with climate but aren't climate focused, justice groups or refugees or diversity focused or disability or all sorts of different interest groups that cared basically, and also 13,000 individuals that are part of this movement as well. So with these hundreds of conversations and lots of sort of feed-in collective co-creation, we had all this this mandate to act on all sorts of quite an exciting program of stuff, and embedded in it, because we've done this process of speaking to people about what they wanted. A lot of it is built around creating value for communities or people acting on the ground. We recognise there's not this sort of top-down kind of way of changing things, but actually, working with the all sorts of inspirational projects on the ground. What do they need? So we're connecting them. So there is connecting them with things like funding opportunities. We have a whole array of different opportunities, a way of accessing funding. Each partner meeting that we do monthly, we open up some doors for, point signpost to some funding things. And we have a partner now that helps to match organisations with funders. And so that's one example of some of the things we do to unlock action on the ground. But also, when we knock on the door of Welsh Government and say, look, we've got 300 organisations that we want to talk about X, then we have quite an open door, and it's really important, we think, to get the voices of the people in the ground shaping policy in the Senedd and in councils as well. So that is one of the things that we are doing, is being a bridge between Welsh Government in both directions, and like an information flow. Here is what the people are saying about, okay, it's all well and good setting this, but that's not the experience of people on the ground. They don't want to be told like this, or and then there is the behaviour change policy, a big policy that's grappling with how climate change is going to affect communities in Wales, and we put it out to the network and the communities, and we've been an integral part of shaping that policy. So it's quite exciting, and Welsh Government, to their credit, have been quite open with the ways of working there, and it's really having quite a big influence on the way policy is being formed. So that's really exciting. And the other key area is sometimes there is a need to work together. Quite often there is a need to work together, but we are stronger together, and when there is a unified voice on certain things, and there is a need for Wales-wide, represented in sort of Wales internationally and nationally, but more interesting to us at the moment is getting the voices together for a collective call to action on certain things. So we are organising next week Great Big Green Week in Wales, which is the largest collection of events that have ever happened in Wales on environment and climate and nature, and so hundreds of events happening all over Wales, and there's a programme around here as well. So and as alongside that, we are going in electric vehicles with a crew of campaigners and media people and photographers, and visiting as many communities as we can as we go around. So that's so there is a launch for that. But another sort of way that we might work together is under sort of the issues that really matter to people. And right now, the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis is ringing quite powerfully in people's ears, and we reckon and people are suffering, and will be a lot more this winter. So we've been thinking very deeply about this and working with a lot of different partners at a UK level to launch, and we'll be launching a collaborative campaign. It's not a Climate Cymru campaign, but we are coordinating it in Wales. And it's launching on Saturday on Bangor, so I'm going to invite you along in a minute. But it will be launching digitally across the country as well, and that's grappling with the fact that people are trying to divert the narrative on the cost of living, blame it on the transition to net zero, which is just full fallacy. There is a need for insulation to get us through in the long run to sort of actual solutions. There's a need for emergency support. And there's a need for community energy and really cheap renewable energy in Wales, as well as some other solutions. So we're working again with a broad network to launch that and to really make sure Wales and UK government do what is needed for the people in the immediate, but also make sure that the transformation is made that doesn't career us from one crisis into another. So that's just a whistle stop of a few of the areas, but it's about bringing people together ultimately and representing the voices of the people of Wales. So, hand over.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Sam. What's the name of that you're launching?
Warm this winter.
Warm this winter. Thank you. Thank you. I'll come back to you, Rob, if I can. Can you share with us some of the lessons you've learned over the last couple of years that we might be able to use in guiding us here in Dyffryn Peris, please?
Yeah, well, thank you. I've been wondering what have we learned? Because we've learned an awful lot. But you're looking sort of for broad lessons. I think the biggest thing that we learned when we started out, we thought that what we needed to develop was ways in which to persuade people and help people to cut their emissions. That sort of seemed the obvious thing to do about climate change. And then once we started looking at our own carbon footprint and our vulnerabilities to climate change, we realised as a community we're really, really remote. We've got very high level of poverty. We're the area with the highest child poverty in Cornwall. We're also, according to the Office of National Statistics, the most remote place in England. That means that we're the furthest from public services. We're a bit strange. Cornwall's this long triangle, and everything, all the action is down the other end of it. We're in the sort of top corner of it, and there's not much around us. So we realised that we were incredibly vulnerable because we didn't have the public services that other communities have that would help us if we deal with our vulnerability to climate change. And we also, a lot of people are on very, very insecure jobs, mainly in the hospitality industry. And that's what pushed us towards looking at tourism. Tourism is associated with about half of our community's carbon footprint. 70% of businesses are dependent on it. It provides 40% of jobs. So it touches all our community in a really sort of quite profound way. So, and that was unexpected that we'd end up here looking at tourism, developing a tourism project. Another lesson that we learned was that you'll end up with unexpected partners as well. When we started out, we were a group of 7 community and environmental groups, mainly voluntary. Some of them were funded, one was a charity. We now have brought in new partners into the partnership who are actually playing a more major role than those original 7 partners. And they are the likes of the local town council, the community network panel, which is sort of our equivalent of a district council, closest thing that we've got to a district council and a unitary authority. But we've got the tourist board on board, the Chamber of Commerce, and so on. And for environmental groups at the beginning, there was a sort of slight scepticism. Why are we getting to bed with these people? Well, because actually through them, we're not talking to the converted. We're reaching new audiences, and that's what we really, really need to do. And we're extending our networks, and that's the really, really important lesson that we also learned. That it's about speaking to as many people as we can to understand the problem that we're facing. And particularly for a remote community, really stretching out beyond our community and learning from other communities as well, but also sharing our learning. And then I suppose the final lesson that we learned was you can't do everything, and you need to sort of put in outside help, but you also need to focus. And one of our best projects, I think, was one in which we started off saying we're going to, pilot some engagement projects with the community. And we thought we were going to do it in quite a traditional way. And then we stumbled upon this organisation called Storylines. And what they do is make digital stories about communities. And working with them, we developed these toolkits that have been phenomenally successful. We picked 10 people within our community. Some of them were really well-known faces. One was a character called Vico, who is now in his 80s, was one of the founding members of the local surf club. And what we did was we got them to talk about their lives and how their attachment to the community and the things that they value, the things that they want to protect. And this was a way into talking about climate that where you're not sitting down and saying, we're now going to talk about climate, because that led into discussions of, how have you seen things change? And Nico said, well, I used to have a beach hut, but it got swept away in the storms, and we had some pictures of that. And then he also talked about how he grew up on a farm. And when at harvesting time, they knew that they could, they had 5 or 6 days to harvest. The weather was dependable, and it's now not so dependable. So these stories we then developed and put on our website, and we've had public screenings of them and engagement activities, and they've been remarkably successful. So those are my lessons.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. And it's well worth people who want to know more to look at your website, because it's an excellent website, isn't it? So there's lots of resource there, the Bude Climate Partnership's website. Allan, come back to you now about lessons that you've learnt in the work with communities so far.
Yeah, I actually, it's got a slightly different answer, but if you could share the Padlet that I created, because originally I was to work in your community and represent examples of things that have happened in other places. And I don't know if you can see that, but that is a Padlet I created about different things that are happening in Machynlleth. Oh, you actually can't see all the pictures there. So I lived for 25 years in Machynlleth. I worked at the Centre for Alternative Technology for 20 odd years. And I've kind of witnessed the development of lots of different community responses to climate change over that time. So I thought I'd put a few of them up there in the Padlet so you get a sense of the scale of different opportunities to answer the climate problem. And they are opportunities, but it takes a bit of kind of reflection, self-reflection about where you're at as a community or an individual, and what level of response you want to get into, how deep, and what type of response you want to give in what area. So if you can all see that Padlet, I can also share this with you afterwards, and also websites to different organisations that are working in Machynlleth. But this is just in one very small community of 2,000 people, plus surrounding areas, a few thousand more. And I've detailed them in different categories. This is quite important. Hub organisations, those are organisations that are going to be there for the community over time and who can act as a central hub for activity. EcoW is one of them. EcoW has one permanent employee, but they have projects going on all the time, and some of that is responding to funding opportunities, some of it comes out of the community, but they can be there as a central body, as a fixed point through which other people can work through. They can hold bank accounts, they can hold funding, in their bank account. They can work with the community in lots of different ways. mae'r is quite, in terms of EcoW's been there for like 25 years, and mae'r has been there for about 10 years. They just focused on food growing in the local community, but again, they've created lots of different projects out of that. And then there's a couple of others there. Community-led housing, this is really interesting. Machynlleth has 5 different housing co-ops in the area, which must be the highest proportion of housing co-ops to individuals anywhere, certainly in Wales, because there aren't that many. But the housing co-ops are really interesting because they provide an informal space where people can get together and create other climate change related activities. So although you might think that the benefit is just for people who live there, generally they're providing accommodation for people short term. They're allowing people to use their meeting spaces. I lived in Machynlleth Housing Co-op for about 7 years. We had bicycle workshops going on during the pandemic. We were at central hubs of mutual aid societies. So these are key places to have in the organisation to build community strength. Trading organisations, slightly different thing. Renewable energy is an obvious one in there. Dudley Community Renewables. It's a wind, has 2 small wind turbines. There's Energy Local, which is doing something slightly different. But then there's Cleta, which is a community-owned shop, and they've taken an old garage, knocked it down, and created a new eco-building that serves the local community and acts as a hub for bringing in local food from growers and other suppliers. I've put, and these are all social enterprises in one form or another. I've put trade in non-social because there's some very important local businesses that are trading who are not social enterprises, and they provide a place for people to sell their produce or to meet or to work through. Informal organisations, there's a whole raft of them. These tend to be unconstituted organisations, and they're delivering quite rapid action without necessarily a lot of work to set up. And then I've got a couple, there's 2 or 3 national organisations who are based in Machynlleth as well, who are charities. So my time is up, but I guess my thinking around putting all these things, they all need structures, and they all need funding, and they all need support. And I guess that's where organisations like myself, like Cwmpas, come in, that we can help guide you through those processes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Diolch, Alan. Sam.
So, things that might relate to Dyffryn Peris. I think to start, I think we're on a good track with what we're doing right here. This is an important sort of, almost a catalyst for action. So I really am excited. I was so excited to hear that this was happening in my local area, and it was a pleasure to be a part of the conversations. And I think a remarkable amount of the good that is done in the world starts with a small group of passionate people. And so I think that is, people often feel unempowered because, it's just us, or there's just a small amount of people. But a compelling idea with the right sort of passion and energy behind it, and some commitment. So I think, I think we need to track down here what is really, kind of getting us going and getting our excitement and energy, and then we need to commit to it and keep at it. And so I think that is one thing just that I've seen from running lots of different projects in different places around the world. But more immediately, I'm also going to give you some tangible call to action, because it's always good to have something specific. We have on Saturday the launch of the Warm This Winter campaign in Bangor. There's a bunch of events happening, not organised by Climate Cymru, but by partners and by different people. I think Brittany as well. But there's some great organisations in this area that are running all sorts of environmental events. So this great big Green Week Bangor, which spans beyond Bangor. And I stuck a few flyers from Salamatu, who's the organiser of that. She gave me last week when I went and met with her. So I put it on the table. There's also on the website. So come and get involved in something that appeals. And also, I suppose the Climate Cymru network, something I didn't mention about it is how we're funded. We're not funded by government, and we're not funded by a partnership structure. Like, people don't have to pay a membership fee. And when you've got a big organisation network, the common sense thing to do would be to charge everyone a little bit, so you could have a big sort of pot to really do deliver stuff. But we really want to make sure that there is always the option to stay involved in Climate Cymru for free, because there is an inclusivity aspect to that. Otherwise, you just end up with the same sort of people that have the money to pay for things. And so it is completely free. You can sign up as a community group. You don't have to have any special qualifications or knowledge, and then you can plug in, and it's very much a case of like, come along to what makes sense. Find there's space there's lots of different spaces. There's a policy hub to help people learn about policy in Wales. There's a partner meeting monthly. There's an email list, and some people just sit on the email list, and when there's something that appeals, they jump on it. Here's a funding opportunity, or here's the thing I really want to say to Welsh Government, and they just jump in when it makes sense and ignores it otherwise. So it's easy to sign up. There's a climate.cymru, join the movement and find a space. There's volunteer space. And so there's another call to action, and there'll be lots of stuff going out about Warm This Winter over the coming months as winter begins to bite and the cost of the energy price cap comes on the 1st of October. So those are some really tangible, I suppose, specific calls to action. But keep at it. I think there's good stuff going to come out of this, and I'm happy to be a part.
And finally, the final question we have before we open up to questions from our assembly is, given the poly crisis that we're going through at the moment, it takes a real energy and a resilience to keep doing this type of work. What is it that keeps you going, Rob? What is it? Is it vision? Is it hope? Is it what keeps you moving on in these hard times?
Yeah, keeps us going. Well, I mean, the fact that we can, I strongly believe if communities pull together, we can achieve so much more than individuals, and that's our only real option. Whether it's the climate crisis or the cost of living crisis or the housing crisis or whichever one. I mean, it's just. I think that's what keeps me going. In terms of what we're doing, which is climate work, and obviously there's, we have one project which is about energy efficiency, and so we're seeking to help people make their homes more energy efficient for climate reasons, but of course it has a massive impact on the cost of living crisis as well. There isn't anything like that here. Because we're quite a small community, it's about 10,000 people, and the wider community is about 18,000. But the other 8,000 who aren't in the central town are really sprinkled around. We've never really had the critical mass for organisations to help the community to develop. So I think the thing that keeps me going is the sense that we really are making a difference. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. And Allan, what can you feedback to us about what keeps you moving on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I did take some time out to reflect about this earlier in the day, because I've been doing this since I was 18. I think I had my first critical interaction with the environmental problem when I was 18, and then I kept on having further interactions over time through university and then moving to Wales. And I think it's been the light and the dark in my life, my whole adult life. And I say the dark, obviously, because there's a lot of work to do, and some of it is quite stressful, and taking care of yourself is incredibly important. It's not something I've always done because I've committed to the environmental element of life over other things. And it's also been the light of my life, also bringing me, for example, to Wales, to live in Wales for 25 years and meeting the people I've met over that time, and developing a whole range of interests that I would never have if I hadn't had those first critical interactions. So I think in terms of what keeps me going, it is fully embodied within me not to stop. And I think that's really important, and working out ways that embody the mission in yourself, and whilst at the same time maintaining your good health, keeping refreshed. Like a few years ago, I decided to do some long distance cycling around Europe, which completely changed my life again. Reconnecting with yourself all the time, really useful. Spending time in nature. In terms of inspiration, I recently became a father for the first time, which I never thought would happen, but it did rather late on in life. And I've got a 5-month-old boy that I take for a walk every morning, and happen to live in a rural place. And he is so excited. He embodies love of trees and leaves and the river, and he giggles and kicks his legs and gets so excited by nature that you kind of start to see things again. A refresh, it's the refresh button. So that's what's inspiring me at the moment.
Excellent, lovely image as well. Thanks, Allan. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, I suppose where to start with this. There's so many different ways you could answer this. Powerlessness was kind of, and a sort of knot in my stomach was kind of a quite common experience for me about all of these issues, And I suppose the antidote to powerlessness is action, in my opinion, and especially action with good people. So if you're working with good people and alongside them, it can be lonely as well. So I found that because I was picking up projects and starting things off where I felt like I was the only one, been grappling with it for quite a few years, and I felt like I was the only person who really was seeing and feeling this, and it turns out I'm not, funnily enough, and connecting with those people really has helped. And also I think it is necessary to see ourselves not as a victim and a passive sort of whatever sort of happens to be washing over us, but cultivating the right sort of attitude day by day, moment by moment. And so I think that is a very current and ongoing process for me. Cultivating is a good term, cultivating stubborn optimism, basically, because we're not going to get anything done without some form of optimism and some kind of like, no, we're doing this is happening. So I think it is necessary to be active and take an active role in your own kind of emotional journey with it, because it is hard, facing up to some difficult things. So there's a few thoughts, but ultimately action is cathartic. So let's get going.
Action, connecting to other people, believing communities can do it, connecting to nature, all these things. Great, I love it, thank you.